again, in an effort to resolve any dissonance, we are always going to bring in every major discipline that we can. And I've often said that in order for oppression, racism, slavery to have existed, you had to have every major institution in America complicit. In other words, everyone had to sign off on this, and they had to somehow make or normalize what was being done. So if you were to consider people like Carl von Linnaeus, for example, considered to be the father of anthropology, this individual, 1707 to 1778, I believe he lived, he was then in a position as a quote, a scientist, even though he lacked any of the actual skills to give him that particular title. But nonetheless, he began to embark upon this notion of classifying races. And, one has to look at the time in which he did that. And while he was, in the mid-1700s, espousing these notions of race and race difference, again, you have to understand that this is a predecessor to any understanding about DNA at all, mitochondrial DNA, no real understanding. But the social agenda then was to clearly share by classifying races that this particular group of people, Europeans, are somehow superior and deserving, and these other folks, Africans, Asians, natives, are somehow inferior and therefore deserving of whatever treatment you're meting out to them.
There was a German guy named, I cannot think his name, Johann Blumenbach, I believe that's his name. He the one came up with the color system. See, before that, we didn't have a color system, but we don't realize over here because, number one, we don't study language. We don't study etymology. We don't study the origins of where that word came from, white, black, and all that.
And so again, this is placed before us as though it is a science, when in fact there's not a shred of science in it. Anyone looking, as a matter of fact, people like Linnaeus are looked upon with great shame from contemporary anthropologists and cultural scientists. It's shamefully, because they realize that there's no science at all. But yet it is employed to ease the conscience, if you will, to somehow resolve the dissonance, to say, no, these people are different, inferior, and therefore all that we have done to them, whether we have raped and pillaged and taken them or forcefully removed them from their lands, all of it was justified because we are indeed superior and they are, of course, scientifically inferior.
I would say that unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America, the primary wealth. You have to have accumulated wealth to start, to build. You did it another way here in Australia. You had to build your accumulated wealth too. You just came and took it, you know what I mean? And that's what they did in most of the countries. That's what you Europeans did. You just took it. We got to catch up with you a little bit.
Initially, the race was a group-based phenomenon. What groups gets there first gets the most. And but after they had done it, after the race ended, see, when racism started, they chose black folk to be the primary subject of a wealth building in the world. And it's not just whites now. Keep in mind that all groups, every group on earth has enslaved and profited from blacks being enslaved, Jim Crow segregated and denied and exploited. But once whites got started, it became an economic issue. It became an economic issue between Europeans and blacks who were being enslaved up until from about the 1500s all the way up to about till about 1859. It was an economic issue. Then in the 1859s, when Charles Darwin wrote the book about survival of the species, survival of the strongest, and that was the same time that the slavery was coming to an end, the emphasis shifted from being an economic issue to be a biological issue. So whites then required through government that every black person born would be designated as black or Negro or colored, and it became a badge then. It became a badge of losers then.
Well, white and black, they're not complexions. This is white. When we talk about white and black, we're talking about white is basically, it's a status issue. Black is not a color of people. It's not either. So what happens, they call it a colored code caste system. I'm going to repeat this so everybody can hear this. It's a colored code caste system. When you travel to other countries, it's not based on your color. It's basically based on your nationality, your principles, your morals. If you look up black in any regular Webster's dictionary, rather people say it's the white man's whatever, it's language. We all went to their school system. They told us to go home and study. Once you study what black is, it's an old English word. It's an old English word. It's still Anglo-Saxon. The Anglo-Saxon was English people. So what happens, they didn't use the term white and black until you came over here into these states. So that has nothing to do with complexion at all. It's a status.